Hi, and welcome. In this video, we're going to look at how to make a graphic organizer and why a graphic organizer can be very helpful when trying to understand the Bible. So let me begin with a story. When I was in seminary, I took an Old Testament class. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't know the Bible stories. So this class was just absolutely overwhelming. It just buried me in information. And so I went to a man who was discipling me and I said, I can't handle this class. It is just way too much information and I don't know what to do. He said, Carl, what you need to try to do is make it more simple. And why don't you draw the entire story of the Old Testament in a single diagram? And that's just crazy stuff. But what that did is it set me on a journey. And it set me on a journey of learning how to simplify and put things in a graphic form. Thus, the word graphic organizer. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to define what a graphic organizer is. We're going to tell you the purpose of a graphic organizer. Then we're going to look at the description of what a graphic organizer is and how this project relates to that. And then we're going to look at the actual project steps. And then we'll end by looking at some practical applications of how to use a graphic organizer. So let me go ahead and take a minute to share my screen. And with that, I will share with you this idea of a graphic organizer. So when we look at a graphic organizer, we're talking about character outcome number 2, competency number 4, and all of this is to help us to interpret the Bible. If you look on the right, you'll see that there is a graphic organizer. GO stands for graphic organizer. And this graphic organizer tells us that we're going to do 5 things. We're going to tell you what, why, who, when, and how. That takes a lot of information and it puts it into a single diagram. So that's an example of what a graphic organizer looks like. Now, let me actually define what a graphic organizer is. A graphic organizer is a one-page diagram that captures an idea and shows how the parts relate to the whole. And you can see that the heart of this graphic organizer on your screen is, this is what a graphic organizer is. And that's going to tell you the what, the why, the who, the when, and the how. They all relate to each other because there's specific questions about what a graphic organizer is or does. Next is the purpose. The purpose of this project is to help you to understand the narrative story of the Bible as the foundation for developing your biblical worldview and a biblical hermeneutic that will allow you to then better understand the scriptures as you study them. A description of this project is that you'll be making a one-page graphic organizer from the entire Bible. I did say that, the entire Bible. And you'll want to be able to use this graphic organizer then to tell the story to other people. And so let me give you an example of how we use, or how graphic organizers are used. So here, IKEA, I think, is one of those quintessential places that you can go if you want to understand what a graphic organizer is. IKEA has mastered that. This diagram is beautiful because there is no English, Spanish, Swahili, Chinese. It's just a picture. And so the beauty of this is, I know what we're going to make. We're going to make a bookshelf. I know the tools we're going to need. We're going to need a hammer, a screwdriver, a pencil. I know what not to do, and I know what to do. Don't do it alone, but do it with others. And this just tells you, here's all the equipment that you're going to have. And here's step 1, step 2, and it takes you through the entire process without a single word. This is a beautiful example of a graphic organizer. Now, with the project steps, what we're going to want you to do is we're going to want you to read the entire Bible from cover to cover. You're going to look for major themes and people and events that make up the biblical narrative. And you want to think through, how would you take this biblical narrative, this biblical story, and put it pictorially so somebody else could understand it. And then you want to show how the entire Bible, both the Old and New Testament, all point toward Christ. The Old Testament is pointing, it's looking forward to the coming of the Messiah. The New Testament is looking back to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. And so when we think about that, and we're thinking about how do we understand our Bible, the graphic organizer is the macro. That's the brown. It's when you look through the binoculars. It's looking at the global picture of something. Whereas when you look at the micro view, that's the Bible study methods. That's project number 6. And that's where you're going to look at through the microscope, and you're going to see the very minute things, and that's in the gold there. So whether you're looking at a virus like the coronavirus, or you're looking at a bacteria, that's the micro look. So we're going to focus on the macro look. Next, here's an example of what came out of that discussion with that man who was discipling me. This is a picture of the entire Old Testament story. And I can easily teach this within 5 minutes. I could teach this within 5 hours. I could teach this over 5 days, which I have done. But the story begins with creation, and that's Genesis 1 and 2. So you can see that. It then moves to the primeval period. And you just keep walking yourself through. You have the patriarchic bondage, wilderness, and wandering. Then we have this period of conquest and division. But within that, we have the book of Judges. And that's the 7 cycles that are going down. And within that period of time of the Judges, you have this beautiful story of Ruth, who stands out as a diamond in a very dark time. People cry for a king, so they get a king in Saul. This is the period of the United Kingdom. We've got 3 kings, David and Solomon, in addition to Saul. But then with Solomon, when he dies, his son Rehoboam doesn't really do well. And as a result, Jeroboam takes the northern 10 kingdoms. Rehoboam takes the southern kingdoms. You see that there are no good kings in the north, and so they get exited early. In the south, they have some good kings, so they get to stay in the land longer, but eventually they too are taken into captivity. Finally, because of God's goodness and his grace, he allows for a period of restoration. And you can see that in Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. So with that very quick overview, you can see the relationships between the books, between the themes, between some of the people. And this is what an example of a graphic organizer. When we think about the applications and the advantages of a graphic organizer, you can think of them in 3 ways. 1, people love stories. If you can learn to tell the narrative story of the Bible, and you can easily remember by having a graphic organizer, that is very engaging for people. They love stories. So that's the first thing that is going to help you by coming up with your graphic organizer. Second is a graphic organizer takes very complex information and it makes it much more simple, and therefore it's easy to remember. And so the simplicity not only allows you to tell the story, but it also is easy to remember. And finally, the last thing that the simplicity of a graphic organizer does is it allows you to easily hand that off and teach somebody else. And so that Old Testament graphic organizer that I showed you prior, this one here, I could teach you that within a half an hour, and you could go and tell somebody the entire story of the Old Testament. So that's the advantage of a graphic organizer. It gives us the macro view when we're doing biblical hermeneutics and we're trying to understand the meaning of a text. It's very important to put that in its larger context, which your graphic organizer establishes. So that's the project of a graphic organizer. I hope this has been informative for you, and have fun making it.